All right, today's reading will be from St. Paul's letter to the Galatians, chapter 1, verses 11 through 19. I'll be doing the explanation according to the Blessed Theophylact, who was an archbishop from the Ohrid region of Bulgaria from the 11th century. Verse 11, "But I certify you, brethren, that the gospel which was preached of me is not after man." The explanation. Since Paul was about to show the Galatians that he had truly departed from the confines of the law, he first recalls his former life and his sudden conversion. Then he explains that he would not have suddenly departed Judaism unless he had received divine assurance. This is why he insists, "My gospel is not according to man," which means I did not have a man for a teacher. I am a disciple of Christ himself. Verse 12, "For I neither received it of man, neither was I taught it, but by the revelation of Jesus Christ." The explanation, the slanderers were saying that, unlike the apostles, Paul had not heard Christ teach in person, but had received from men everything he knew. Therefore, he affirms, "Christ himself, who taught Peter's disciples, also revealed the gospel to me." Verse 13, "For ye have heard of my conversation in time past in the Jews' religion, how that beyond measure I persecuted the church of God and wasted it." The explanation here. What makes it clear that I received the gospel through what makes it clear that I received the gospel through divine revelation? My former conduct. How could such a persecutor as I was have suddenly converted unless some divine revelation had drawn me? That I was a fierce persecutor is clear from the fact that even you Galatians, so far from Judea, have heard of it. See how Paul intensifies each of his points. He does not simply state "I persecuted," but adds "beyond measure." Furthermore, "I wasted it," which means I set my hand to reduce it to rubble so that it was gone. This is the work of a despoiler. Verse 14, "And profited in the Jews' religion above many of my equals in mine own nation, being more exceedingly zealous of the traditions of my fathers." The explanation. The apostle continues, "I displayed more fervor than any other Jew of that time, and I was advancing in my war against the church. This may also mean I was honored among the Jews. But do not think that I conducted this persecution out of vainglory or wrath, even though I was prelest." Spiritual deception from the noun wandering, going astray. "In my conduct against the church, I did nothing for worldly reasons, but acted out of misguided zeal for God. Therefore, now that I recognize the truth, how could I preach inconsistently out of the desire for worldly glory and not proclaim what the truth demands and what Christ has taught me?" Verse 15, "But when it pleased God, who separated me from my mother's womb and called me by grace." The explanation here. If God had separated Paul from his mother's womb for the gospel and chosen him, then it is clear that God allowed him to remain in Judaism for the intervening time by his divine providence, in order that Paul's sudden conversion might draw many to the faith and strengthen them in it. God separated Paul not at random, but according to divine foreknowledge of his worthiness. God called Paul because of his virtue, declaring, "He is a chosen vessel unto me," as is said in Acts 9:15. But Paul states modestly that he was called by grace because of divine mercy and not on account of his own worthiness. Verse 16, "To reveal his Son in me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles." The explanation. The apostle did not say "to reveal to me," but "in me." Thus, he shows that he not only learned by word, but also that his heart was completely filled with the Spirit. The inner man was steeped in knowledge, and Christ was speaking in him. Paul is saying, "God the Father revealed the Son to me, not only for me to see him, but that I might also bring him to others. My belief and my election are from God. So how can you say that I was taught by men? And he revealed his Son to me, not simply that I might preach him, but that I might do so among the Gentiles. How then could I possibly preach circumcision to the Gentiles?" 16. Continue on to 16. I cut that off. "Immediately I confirmed conferred not with flesh and blood. An explanation, that is, I did not speak with the apostles, calling them flesh and blood in accordance with their nature. Paul may also be referring to mankind in general. I did not learn anything from any man. Verse 17, neither went I up to Jerusalem to them which were apostles before me, but I went into Arabia and returned again unto Damascus. And the explanation, what does the apostle mean by this? Is he so deluded as to think that he is self-sufficient and needs no advice? Did he not listen to him who said, be not wise in thine own conceit, and woe to them that are wise in their own conceit? God forbid. Because his slanderers insisted that the apostles must be followed, but not him, and that they were apostles before he was, Paul was compelled to make this statement in order to restrain these deceivers. It is indeed absurd that one who learned from God should place his reliance on men. Paul does not say this out of pride. He is demonstrating the authenticity of his own preaching. Moreover, because it also seemed good to those who were in Jerusalem, he did go up to Jerusalem not to learn, but to persuade others. He did not go up to Jerusalem directly, that is, in the beginning. He went up later in order to teach. Paul first toured wild, uncultivated regions. If he had remained with the apostles, it would have hindered his preaching, which then would not have spread so quickly. And so he hastened to the least civilized of the Gentiles. Behold Paul's humility. In listing the cities he visited, he does not mention how many people he converted, and yet in Damascus he so confounded the Jews that a plot was laid against him by the local Jewish ethnarch. He does mention his great accomplishments, but not out of vainglory. If he were viewed as an insignificant figure, merely a disciple of other disciples, his preaching would be rendered ineffective. And verse 18, then after 3 years I went up to Jerusalem to visit Peter, and abode with him 15 days. And the explanation, when one as accomplished as Paul visits Peter not to obtain help, but to honor Peter as greater than himself, it betokens great humility. Therefore he did not say to see Peter, but to visit him. Visit is the word used by those who seek knowledge of the great and magnificent cities, and as we go to see holy men, but whereas we go for help, Paul only went out of respect. To visit someone is a mark of respect. To abide, that is, to stay with him for a length of time, indicates deep love and friendship. Paul does not say that he was taught by Peter, but that he will abode with him, choosing a word that connotes proximity and movement toward Peter, rather than mere presence in his company. The Greek text, whatever this word is, both prefix and preposition. The preposition signifies movement towards and closeness to somebody. But in verse 19, but the other of the apostles saw. Verse 19, but other of the apostles saw I none, save James the Lord's brother. Paul went up to Jerusalem to see Peter, because he held him in great honor. While there, he saw James as well, whom he also honored, calling him brother of the Lord. So far was Paul from being jealous. He could also have called him the son of Cleopas. James was not a brother of the Lord according to the flesh, but was reckoned as such. This is how he was a son of Cleopas. Cleopas and Joseph were brothers. When Cleopas died childless, Joseph raised up seed for him. Joseph begat James and his other brothers, and Mary, the daughter of Cleopas, whom the gospel calls the sister of the Lord's mother, since Joseph had a paternal care for the virgin rather than a husband's feelings towards her.